Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. All right.
We're on.
Where are we? What day is this? How
Uh,
long has it been?
yeah, it feels like forever. It's only been a while. Hello, everybody.
Hi, welcome to the Business of Theater, a working title. I'm your host, Darnell Radford.
We have no subtitle for this week, do we?
We didn't get there yet.
Oh,
As Mitch, and
I'm
that's
trying
Mitch
to.
Weiss.
Yeah, it's Mitch Weiss. I'm trying to get us moving along here. Move, move,
Yeah.
move. So,
Uh,
I'm going right for the topic.
okay.
Okay, I have two friends, married couple, one of which um, is a manager of special events of industrials, makes a good living. The other one is a stage manager for concerts and industrials. They have children, and so they are in the freelancer community. You know, they literally work project by project. So it can fall apart at any moment, or they can do very well. And that part of the industry gets paid pretty well when they get the job. So I gather they can do okay. The question is, and the situation is, there are people who are happy working on, as I used to be as a manager. You work for a producer in various capacities, and you do the best job you know how, and you make your salary and you go home. And then you move on to the next show or project. What happens if you have that inspiration that you want to be the person who pays other people and you want to have control over what that project is? And you are inspired by the notion of being a producer. How do you plan for that? We know how you train to be a stage manager. We know how you apprentice in a union. We know how you go to school for certain technology. How do you train to be a producer and know what you're doing so that you don't stress yourself out and end up in the funny farm?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Well, it's interesting that it seems like many roles in theater are apprenticeships. Like you have to watch someone else do it. Like you can't just pick up a book and understand it. Like it's going to be anecdotal, the book,
Mm-hmm.
because markets are different, um, resources are different. There's going to be so many things that are not the same. It's going to be if you read this book and it said right here that all I have to do is send these 5 emails and I'm a producer. Like, well, no. um, yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is like you want to keep it. There are many roles in theater that are about keeping the trains running on time
Mm.
and bringing the right people to the table with what they bring to the table. I used to say this, when I was primarily an artistic director, that I bring people to the table with what they bring to the table,
Okay.
and you have to know what is needed, and you have to know whether you're capable of providing that or that someone else is better suited to provide that.
Again, that's middle management or upper
Mhm.
middle management.
Yeah.
I remember just before the pandemic, I was running a production meeting. And the people at the table, we had all the designers who were all Broadway experts, and we had the director, and we had hair people and choreographer. I mean, everybody was at this table, and they're all looking to me. And my job is to get them all working in the same direction with a budget that they know how to use for the benefit of what the producer told me they want.
Mm.
And that's, to me, a big line in the sand. So putting these people together, absolutely, but the producer is the one who approved hiring all these people,
Hmm.
right? I may have written the contracts or gotten lawyers to write the contracts for them. The unions may have told us what they had to get paid, or certainly if you're in a smaller theater, you just figure out what you can afford and see if they'll work for it. And then you put everyone together, but it's not the producer doing that. So who is the producer other than the obvious? The old joke used to be the only thing you need to know how to do to become a producer is to have and raise money. After
Yeah.
that, get out of the way. And that's not true, though, because a good producer knows how to pick and choose who's going to work for them and who's going to
Yeah.
make the project work. So, that, but the only requirement, there is absolutely no definition of a producer that doesn't include you got to have the money.
Is it safe to say the producer lays the foundation?
Um, no.
Or okay. All right.
Wait,
Well,
I'm sorry, I have an opinion.
yeah,
No. It sounds,
well, if anyone is listening and you went to Wikipedia,
yeah,
Wikipedia will tell you a theatrical producer is a person who oversees all aspects of mounting a theater production, and they're responsible for the overall financial and managerial functions of a production or venue, raises or provides financial backing, and hires personnel for creative positions. That
that
is the first
they're
thing
they're
it's
missing they're missing one very important item. The
Mhm.
producer chooses the material in which all of these people are going to work on. It is the producer who decides what the show is going to be and what they usually have a passion for. If you're going to try to raise lots of money or have put lots of money into a theatrical production, you better like what you're working on.
Yeah.
And as a manager or as a director or anybody else, you can just be hired. Just do the best you can with it,
Mhm.
right? But you are hired to work on somebody else's vision of what ought to be on a stage.
Yeah.
And so the producer chooses that. I do know that in most cases, the first people hired by a producer is a lawyer, first of all, because you have to get the rights to the play or musical you want to produce. That costs money. Then you want to have a general manager or somebody to kind of lead the administrative angle, to set up the bank accounts, to have payroll set up, to figure out how much the budget should be. Producers almost never know how to do that.
Mhm.
It is somebody else who's an expert at budgeting. So you hire them. Now you've got two people who cost you money, and it may be a year or two or three away from the date that you're even going to go to rehearsal. So you're
Yeah.
laying out this money, right? So again, how do you plan for that? And who are these people that claim they know what they're doing? Or are they all just saying, I don't know, I made a lot of money as a dry cleaner, um, owning a dry cleaning business. And I just always wanted to be a producer. And so I'm going to do my nephew's play and use my money. I mean, who are these people?
Well, I started in the basement in a
That's
dry
it.
cleaner, and I moved on up to the theater upstairs.
Yeah. you know? And
Yeah.
it's certainly if you're not in New York or California, you're dealing with a church basement or your high school auditorium.
Yeah.
So at what point are you really a producer? Are you just acting like a producer? Or, I mean, and how does that get you ready for a producer? And then if you're in a nonprofit, that's a whole different setup. Um, the reason the question's important to me is again I am lucky to know some people who have moved up, who have actually started as company managers or stage managers and become general managers, or just found a project that they fell in love with and got enough people together to raise enough money to get it started, and then attracted some other rich person to join on with them to get it to the next step, and then the next step. And so when they finally get the show opening, it's their baby, just like the writer's baby. And
Yeah.
a show opens and closes and gets terrible reviews and it's gone. And they've spent years of their life and $15 million or whatever it cost. I'm fascinated. Who are these people and how do we train good ones?
Yeah. And it does seem like there are many roles in this industry that you sort of stumble into. This isn't exactly what you intended to do, but you realize that somebody has to somebody has to handle this. Like there are many small uh theater companies, before they become nonprofits, they're fiscally sponsored. Maybe this
Mm-hmm.
is a conversation that happens at a table at a college with 4 or 5 people who are in a theater program who believe they can do a better job or that they have other ideas on what to do. So they come together and they start a company. And they all have strengths
Yeah.
because they've been working with each other, and they all just sort of decide to take on various roles. And
I think you're very right. I think that is the way most of it happens. My first job as musical director was on Martha's Vineyard, and I didn't know this at the time. I don't know. I don't even remember how I was hired, but it was Ithaca College, which I had no connection to, and the students there had graduated, and they decided, since one of them had a home on Martha's Vineyard, that they would have a summer theater company.
Hmm.
And they literally did stock theater. Every week was a different show for 6 or 7 weeks, alternating musicals with plays. And there are some stars that ended up coming out of it, but I guess the person who started the theater starts to think of themselves as a producer because
Hmm.
somehow they were able to survive the project. You know, I don't know. And by the way, then in that particular theater, which doesn't
Perhaps it's
exist anymore,
because I'm the one of us to survive.
I've been waiting for that voice and that song out of you. I don't, you tortured
So
me
was
waiting this
Mark
long.
so is Mark Cohen the producer?
Oops, no. Anyway, but actually, in fact, I don't mind telling you this. I'm going to forget his name. Forgive me. But if you see the movie Jaws, the assistant police chief, not the police chief, not the star, but the assistant, he's the one who put that theater company together in Martha's Vineyard. And his big claim to fame came 2 or 3 years after that when he got this role in Jaws.
Hmm.
And that's the last I've heard of him.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Kramer. Okay, give him credit where credit is due. Jeffrey Kramer was his name. And a delightful man. And I know that he had no money because we slept on cots, four to a room, over a grocery store with no air conditioning and no fan. And we were paid. Um, and we had sold out houses. So I don't quite get how that worked. I was a youngster, and all I knew how to do was play the piano. Um, but again, who would I have learned anything from there? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, it's yeah, and the thing is, like, you have to get to the other side to even take stock in what you've learned.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think our system. I don't want to get overly philosophical here, as I tend to do, But during the pandemic, as we keep looking at new normals,
Hmm.
part of this is it's the system is harder than it needs to be,
Yes.
and there aren't enough people now that we're coming out of the pandemic. Most people are falling back into the trap of the way we've done them before because we know what that process is.
Hmm.
We really needed to have think tanks and come up with new ideas. Who does what? How do we let people have dinner with their families while they're working on a show? Why do we choose to have 4 weeks of rehearsal for a play and 5 weeks for a musical when in Britain they could be working for months on a show while
Hmm.
doing other things, but it's a different concept. I don't think one's better than the other. I mean, a chorus line took a year to both write and rehearse. So we have other possible systems, but who do we go to try them out? To say, hey, this isn't going to work to just throw it on a stage. And a producer might be the person who says, I'm going to make this creative process work and work differently than we originally thought because we want to have a successful, culturally relevant show.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Uh,
Forgive my
no,
philosophy.
no, no, not at all. I was, as you said, I was thinking of Wait in Sweeney Todd.
Mm.
Easy now, hush, love, hush. Don't distress yourself. What's your rush? Uh, the thing is, like, yeah, what is the rush?
Money.
We,
It's only we only have so much money. We can only afford so many weeks of rehearsal. That
yeah.
that seems to me to be the only reason we do things a certain way. And since we are often asking people to work for very little money, it would seem to me money isn't the reason people work on shows on the lower tier of working on
Mhm.
theater. And perhaps like community theater does, you say, hey, you go to work during the day, we're going to rehearse at night, we're going to do it for 4 months. That's community theater. Do we do professional theater that way? Maybe some, maybe not all, but is that a possibility? How do
Well,
you pay people? I don't know.
there is an argument that time is more valuable than money.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I feel like uh, this is something I always wonder why we don't think about. Like, it might just make sense to get a couple of people together over the weekend for several months than it would be to cram them into a space for a short period of time. It
Even
also
Hamilton worked that way, right? Hamilton
it,
was a bunch of college kids, and I'm sorry, in the Heights was a bunch of college kids getting together
mhm.
and just saying we're putting on a show, and whatever process they went through over time, they didn't pay themselves anything.
Yeah. Well,
But
I think
that's
what's different for us, like, for these operating theater companies, is that they're not sharing in the profits. This isn't a new production where, when it's all said and done and it's a success, they will all have, you know, they can fight for points.
right. But
You know,
maybe that's one thing that can change.
yeah.
Again, how many theater companies um, restrict themselves to new works? You're not going
Mhm.
to get points from a show that's already been produced, and you're trying to raise money from ticket sales,
Yeah.
right? Right. So that's a whole different situation. And all of them have a validity depending on what you're trying to do. I just like encouraging new work. There
Yeah.
is a place for doing the classics. There's no question.
I know,
Uh,
it's hard for people to continuously have in the back of their minds that it is about sustaining this entity. because
Hmm.
they're hired into the role. So when they're hired into the role, they want to make their money and they want to go do other things. But it's like, um, every now and then there's this argument about whether there are too many theaters or not enough theater companies. And the thing is, like, well, no, the answer isn't that the answer isn't that there are too many theater companies. It's that the whole point of that is that each one of them has a collection of people that sustain it, that work together to, you know, make magic on those stages. And it can't be everybody. So yes, it is kind of interesting how equity requires, um, you know, particulars for auditions and so on. But really, the company started because a handful of people thought they could work together
Right.
and and, and wanted to continue working together. But the union sort of forces them to work with other people.
Well, and under certain circumstances,
Yeah. And
and I understand they're protecting. Look, people do want to make a living,
yeah.
if you're taking this seriously, which is, you could argue Broadway is so unionized, and that's when you've got a show that you think you can make money off of. That's how you do the Broadway system. And
Mhm.
if you've got a smaller show and you don't have as much money, you can maybe do the off Broadway system. But regional theaters, there's a mixture. You know, I one of the things that again I learned from producer Joe Papp is if somebody comes to you and says, "But I can't rehearse in 4 weeks or 5 weeks. We're creating something, and I'm doing it with a team of people, and this is my concept, and it's not usual." Well, you go to the union and you say, "This is what we're trying to do. Can we give it a try?" And in my experiences, in 80% of the time, they're going to say yes, because one, the actors involved are agreeable to it, and that they have a benefit coming their way after the fact, as you said, should it succeed.
Mhm.
Um, Unfortunately, on Broadway, and what happens a lot on Broadway is they'll see a show in the West End, or in some regional theater and say, "That's wonderful." That's less of a risk moving it to Broadway. They've already seen it done. It's those shows that open cold on Broadway that you want to shake your head and go, "Really? You really want to experiment with this when that much money is involved?"
You couldn't
Uh,
open this anywhere else
yeah,
first.
first, right? Although that costs money too. Again, if you're trying to keep control of it.
Yeah.
But there are smarter minds. I know my mother would be very upset for me saying this. There are smarter minds than mine, and and if they could get together and sit down and say, "Hey, we don't want people to starve, but we want a creative process that's as flexible as possible. How do we combine this? How many options can we give?" And look, Actors Equity has showcases. They have readings that are allowed. They have, what's called a set contract. They have touring things. They have a lot of different options, but they're still all based on get thee to the performance as quickly as possible, so you're making money from the audience, so you can afford to pay our actors.
Hmm. Do you think this time was wasted?
You know what, the pandemic?
Yeah.
Um, oh, what a heavy and good question. The cop out answer, excuse that phrase, um, is yes and no. Um, I think it's not wasted because there are many people who are thinking about new ways to do things and what happened and what could happen. Um, I think. This is my less than humble opinion again. I think the George Floyd incident had more to do with change in a positive sense than the pandemic has. It just happened to coincide.
Mm.
I think the pandemic showed us to be vulnerable, and the people in power at that time didn't know what to do with it. Therefore, it seems to me 50% of the artistic directors across the country are quitting or being fired because they don't know how to sustain their budgets unless they're begging people for donations. And during a pandemic, you can't do that because you're not producing anything.
Mm.
So I think that shows how vulnerable our system is. If you cannot break even from ticket sales, you're still overcharging your audience. You're asking people to give you money when they're not even seeing something.
Well,
That's a
and then
that's a
and
strange notion.
yes, and then there are many who, you know, want are still hung up on like well, not hung up, but like their focus is accessibility, but realistically they are compromising themselves to be accessible. It's like,
Right.
no, I want our tickets to be affordable. It's like, yes, but they don't pay bills. Like, I mean, it's in everyone's curtain speech that ticket sales only account for,
Right.
you know, a percent. Now we're
So,
just saying a percentage. Like it was 50%. It's probably like 40 or 30%.
well, different theaters,
Or,
different
yeah,
percentages.
it
The
depends.
That's the reason why I tend to favor, after these many years of working both nonprofit and for profit, I favor the for profit system, which, if you hear me talk, doesn't sound like I do. Um, because if a show doesn't make its money, it closes. And that's the end of that. And the people who invested in it lose all their money.
Yeah.
So we don't shut down nonprofits because they can't cover their costs. And they're not even paying taxes. Commercial theater has to pay tax. So the nonprofits get the benefit of no taxes. They get to raise money and give tax deductions to the people who give them money, and they still can't break even.
Mm.
There's a big question here with that system. And are they supposed to be what are they supposed to be doing? Are they there to produce classics? I mean, some of them, that's their mission. But do we need to give a tax deduction, or do we need to say you've got to pay for the cost of tickets? I mean, I'm not in favor of that. Don't get me wrong, but at least in the commercial world, 80% of shows will lose all their money. That's a crapshoot that the investors take.
Yeah.
In the nonprofit, I get, I don't know, a dozen requests for money every week. I'm not that rich. And why would I give you money if I'm not even seeing your shows? And
Yeah.
and that's what they ask for. It's I don't it there's no answer at the moment, but I really wish that what we didn't do during the pandemic was sit around with the smartest people in our business and rethink this. I bet you we
Yeah.
could have come up with something, and we may still, but I don't. I think everyone is so busy trying to stay afloat that they're
Mhm.
not willing to sit around and think. I don't think it's sustainable what we have, but we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know.
Again, it goes back to industrials and special events and festivals and all these things that if you can get a salary, be the stage manager or be the general manager or do hair and makeup, you get a salary. Just get the job. But if you're
Yeah.
the producer or the investor or the nonprofit, everything's at risk. How do we train you for that? And maybe use your mind to change the process. I don't,
Yeah.
you know.
And really, and the mindset is like, this isn't play. Like, you're
Right.
working.
Right.
This is work. It's not play. Um, I know. There are times where I'm like, I want to turn our upper lobby into a bake sale.
Yeah.
Just We're always open. We have fresh cookies. you
You
know, Coffee is every 25 minutes or so. We put
let's
fresh
talk about a successful thing. While get off this topic for a minute. Just had the Broadway flea market.
coffee.
I am proud to say again, my union's table at PAM,
Can I have some?
Association of Theatrical Press Agents and Managers. Our table raised the most money for Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, slash, well, what used to be called the Actors Fund, it is now called Community Entertainment Fund.
Mhm.
Uh, at our table in one afternoon, we took in $50,000
That's great.
at one table. You put all the tables together, in one day, they raised over $1 million from
Mm.
a flea market. These are all donated pieces of crap, old programs, old T-shirts, opening night gifts that nobody wanted in their closet,
Crap.
and they raised $1 million.
Meanwhile, one of our listeners is looking at their keepsake that
Yeah,
they
I'm
got from
sorry.
the flea market, and they're like, "It's crap. $400 on this. This piece of crap."
I know, and I'm there trying to sell it to them. But but I will glorify
What do I gotta do to put this in your car tonight?
the fans. I have to tell you though, it was joyous talking to people who, it didn't feel like they were idiots in any way whatsoever. They knew what they were buying, why they were buying it, and it gave
Mhm.
them joy. And I'll be honest, with you, being at the table, that was what's exciting. You just say,
Well,
"Wow, this is." I'm not conning somebody into this.
mhm.
They want this because it's a memory.
I'll tell you, it's very similar, um, to so I was in I really wanted to do, the first live podcast interview since the pandemic when I was in New York for Comic-Con, and I could not make it work schedule-wise, but it's very similar, the flea market and Comic-Con. People came there for very specific things they were looking for. They were scouring sections for things, like, my
Mhm.
partner particularly was looking for anything with, Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Pourquoi?
For what?
Hmm.
Because he
See,
loves Hunchback.
well, here's though the slight difference. 100% of the money, I mean, not even a dime, doesn't go to charity at the flea market, the Broadway flea market. We are
Mm,
raising money to give people some free medical care when they don't have it, to help
yeah,
people who are at home and can't get out because they're ill, to theaters that are about to go under and just need a few bucks, somebody who
mhm,
can't pay a down payment on a room so that they don't become homeless.
yeah.
This is, I mean, cancer research for children. Every penny is going to what used to be called the Actors Fund and Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. Um, Comic Con is going to someone's pocket. There's a big difference.
I'm talking about the joy of the purchase,
And
not
I'm
the
talking
mission,
about
not the mission behind the sale. But
I would
yes,
not volunteer at a table at Comic Con. That's my point.
no, no, the mission behind the sale is way more, valuable, at the Broadway flea market than, a sale at Comic-Con.
Right.
But I just mean it's a passionate fan base
Mhm.
who will, spend whatever they think is, justified
So why
for
can't we
whatever
get them to cover the cost of keeping theaters alive? Is that only by donation? We have to beg you to say, "Oh yeah, you already bought a subscription for the year, and now it's not enough. Give us another $10,000 out of your pocket." And
well,
I mean,
We
that's
can.
what we do.
I mean, but this is the thing, we have to remind people of why they've why we're valuable, or why they value us, if they value us. That's why sometimes I'm often saying, like, what is how many people follow us on social media? How many people are on our mailing list? Like,
Hmm.
these are the people we have to satisfy. I'm not necessarily trying to get the entire world to buy tickets to our shows. I'm trying to engage the audience who's already committed to us, who's already who's already connected to us, who's seen shows in the past, who's subscribed in the past. Uh,
Except if you combine that, both nonprofit and commercial theater, it's
mhm,
still, what show are you presenting? Is it entertaining? Is it their taste? A lot of people go to work and don't have time to just go see everything. And I
true.
will tell you, here in New York, I mean, if I wanted to see a show a night, I still couldn't see everything that's available right now.
Mhm.
Right now. And I'm always being asked to see a reading or a workshop, in addition to the fact that there's Broadway and off Broadway, and those are expensive. How am I supposed to see all of that? Luckily, in our business, if you work in it, we tend to get freebies,
Yeah.
early on. And let's switch to the topic of COVID, shall we? What a transition. Not good at all. In addition to that, we're stuffing people in a theater. We're no longer telling them they have to wear masks or be vaccinated,
Ugh.
and people and shows are still closing temporarily because people backstage are getting sick, and they've been vaccinated. Luckily, they're not dying. I mean, there's a big difference. But what is this about? How do we move our world? I mean, I guess the whole world is trying to figure this out. But if I go indoors, I still wear a mask. That's my thing. It's my health. That's the decision I've made for myself. I don't get why other people don't do the same. And then
Yeah.
it's
Well,
theater. It's theater. We want to keep each other healthy, and we're in a tight room. Those seats are close to each other,
oh, yeah.
and
I mean,
backstage is even closer.
yeah. I feel like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, if there's a mask requirement, I wear the mask. I don't have any complaint, nothing at all. Every single one of my bags has a reusable mask. I wash them every week. But I keep them in the bag
Hmm.
because I change bags all the time. So it makes sense. Make sure that I have one. And sometimes I might be with someone who says, like, "Are masks required?" And I just give them a look like, "Are you what?" Yes. Yes. You should have a mask anyway. But I don't know. I think the thing is, like, they hear someone on social media, or they see someone on social media, they hear someone on the news talk about COVID fatigue, and then they
Yeah.
go, "That's what I got." It's
Yep.
just like anything else. Like, everyone who thinks they have ADHD, it's like, could you
Well,
just be hyper? Could you just be a pain in the ass? I
yeah.
mean, you
Well,
could just be.
and look,
I
we all have. Um,
ADHD?
no,
Yeah.
yeah, that too. But we're all tired of this, and I'm tired of the masks. And I tend to
Yeah.
go places where I don't have to wear masks. I mean, staying outdoors as much as possible.
As
Um,
long as those parts of the country exist,
yeah. Well,
it
and
ain't
that's
going
it. But
nowhere.
that's again a choice. Why there's some shows I'm not going to see yet.
Mhm.
Luckily, like I said, in New York, we have so many options that you try to choose one. And I don't mean to. Yes, I do. This is
Well, so
about
I will
health. This is just about, there are
so I
old,
will say
sick
this.
people in the audience. Be
I
kind
will
to them.
say
Wear a mask. That's it.
yes. I will say this. If you need an you know like reassurance that you should still be wearing a mask, like just look at the news updates. So for
Hmm.
instance, Carnegie Hall lifts its mask requirement, right? But then uh
That
you
was
know
announced today, by the way. And we should say what the date is. Nah, we don't have to.
yeah, I mean today's the 17th. We're
Of
listening as
October.
yeah. So you're probably listening to this on the 18th if I've done my work. I'm already putting it in there because it's gonna. Yes, but the thing is, like Carnegie lifts them their mask mandate, their requirement. But over the weekend, the public canceled shows because of COVID.
As did two Broadway shows.
Yeah. Uh, so when you think about it, it's just like it's still out there. So even though we're sort of like dipping our toe in, it's kind of like yeah, we've opened the lake again, but it's but still the reason we had to close the lake is still
Yeah,
very
it's
much out.
it's 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 still, like you said, you're dipping your toe in the water. It's just indoors with lots of people is not the place to
Yeah,
experiment. That's my only point.
true.
I'm there too. I do know that when I go in an elevator, I put a mask on. It's a tight room. That's
Well,
it.
I mean,
You know.
if you think about it like this, so think about like a factory or some sort of facility where they had those signs as you walk into work. How many days they've gone without an incident?
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
it didn't stop them from going to work.
Right.
They still had safety precautions, even though and they've gone so many days without them. By taking those precautions, we kind of have to look at it that way. Like, as long as there's still a COVID, as long as there's still a COVID vaccine, um, there's probably a need for a mask mandate.
All
I
right.
mean,
Well,
maybe not a mandate.
it's a disturbing. Yeah, that's always the point.
Maybe not a
It's a
mandate. It's
disturbing
probably
just the topic is annoying. Again, anyway, it to me it's
in general. What we're saying is, if you
yeah
go to one theater and you don't have to wear a mask, but you go to another theater and you have to wear the mask.
yeah,
You have to
and it
wear the
doesn't,
mask.
and it's not embarrassing to wear the mask in the one that doesn't require it. It is just about health. There's
Unless
nothing
you're
else about it.
unless the only time you need to be embarrassed wearing your mask is if you're wearing it under your nose or under your chin. Is a
There you
chin
go.
diaper. So,
There you go.
uh, it's a mask. It's not a chin diaper. So if you're wearing a chin diaper, you ought to be embarrassed.
All right, we need a
Yeah.
song. We need a song. What is there a song about a chin
Uh,
diaper? That's the question.
oh, I don't know.
Yeah, there's the show Baby. I'm trying to think of songs from it. That was not easy to remember. Oh well. Um, so
I
anyway,
know.
we
That one's more like a jingle.
like a
It's got to be a jingle. Something,
anyway,
something, something wiper.
and so the audiences again. New York is pretty crowded right now.
Mm.
Certainly, the theater district is, and yet they're still telling us we're not back to where we were pre-pandemic, which scares me a lot since I don't remember it being more crowded than it is right now.
It's almost there, but
Yeah, the question is that we only have, out of 41 Broadway theaters, only 25 of them at the moment have shows running, and maybe five of them are selling out.
mm,
So, where's the audience? Are we producing more theater than there's a need for? You talk about, did we learn anything during the pandemic? That wasn't analyzed either. It's like, it's going to take a while. I do know, if you follow history, which most of us don't, the 1918 pandemic, it took 5 years for the society, at least from what I've read, if they know what they're talking about, to feel like it was back to normal.
Mm.
Okay, that's interesting history. Then, in addition to that, it was followed by the Roaring Twenties, which was entertainment up the kazoo. So we have a lot to look forward to. How patient should we be? Should we be pulling back a little bit? As you said, maybe doing less theater, running it longer if there's an audience. Maybe, yeah, I have no answers to this. Like I said, there are smarter people than I am. But we never discussed it. And that's the part that disappoints me.
Roaring.
Yeah.
The roaring 20s.
Yeah. All right. What else?
Angela Lansbury.
Oh, Lord, how could we have forgotten?
Yeah.
Yep. When people, and recently I've been seeing John Lithgow on doing interviews also. There are good people who also do good work, and we just have to celebrate them.
Mm.
Angela Lansbury, everyone you talk to, she was one of them. John Lithgow's alive. We should celebrate him now. He's a good guy. And by the way, he was one of the people I met in that summer stock in Martha's Vineyard. He was directing the Glass Menagerie, and I was his assistant director. He was not
Mm.
famous yet. So again, you don't want to burn bridges. You want to stay friendly with everybody you meet at the beginning. Oh, longevity. That was the other topic. How does one have longevity in this business where every time a show closes, um, you're out of work? Or if you're in a nonprofit, they stress you out so much that you need to leave.
Mm. It's very true.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, you need a break, but you've been doing this for so long. It's just I what is it? What is it? They don't. What do they say? You don't leave jobs, you leave managers or something like that.
Yeah, you leave bad bosses.
You leave bad bosses. Yeah, and that's what happens. Like, you take a breather and you end up back in it again until somebody else, you know, uh, pushes you to the
Yeah.
limit, and then you leave again. I think people want to do the best they can, right? Um, so they at first they want to seem like a go-getter. They want to seem like they can handle it. They don't want people to doubt whether bringing you on the team was a good choice or not. But then they realize that, wait a minute, I said yes to too many things, and even if you know that, it's gonna be hard for the people who kept asking you to do things to realize that they asked too much of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this is why I asked, did we waste time during this pandemic not having these necessary conversations? Because I feel like a few people got together and had a chat, you know, in a living room, but they didn't have it in a big forum, saying, like, you know what, I am not working for free anymore. I am not working for, the wages that I had before that. Like, this, I knew that this job should pay more, and I'm just not going to accept that anymore. Uh, but there's still that mindset of people who are like, well, if you don't take it, somebody else will. And that's true. But if I don't, I mean, we have to kind of get in the mindset that if I don't take it, the opportunity that I'm actually looking for may present itself.
Well, there's a problem. Again, this is systemic, I guess. Headhunters. When you get up to the point where people are looking for experienced personnel versus we're going
Hmm.
to mentor you and you're going to rise, climb up the ranks within your theater company. They look at your resume and say, well, how come you were at all these different theater companies? You were only there for 2 years, as opposed to thinking, I got the experience I could from that job at
Hmm.
that theater company.
Yeah.
The person in charge was not a good boss, and I decided to move on to find somebody who could teach me more.
Or it's only justified when you actually move.
Yeah,
So if so you almost have to leap
yes, exactly.
when you leave.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess the conversations we should have is no more lateral moves. Like, you don't want to move from this organization to the exact same job in the next organization. You should
Well,
want it.
you have no choice sometimes if the job you enjoy doing, let's say you're a marketing director, or
Yeah.
and you're good at it. Well, what choice do you have if you're moving to another company? Maybe because you hate your boss, or maybe because you're bored and you want to have new challenges. So you look for either a larger, richer nonprofit to work for, which is moving up,
Mhm.
right? And you can end up doing the same position there, but it looks like all you did was hop around. And that's not true. But that's the way, unfortunately, headhunters look at it. And I
Mhm.
know it's only because they tell me this. Um, that's unfortunate. To me, I want, and Lord knows from the 38 Broadway shows or something that I've done, there were good bosses and terrible bosses. Thank God the show closed and I got to move on. Because when you get the good one, you say, wow, why did I even stay at the bad one for even that long? Right?
Yeah.
You until you move on, you don't know that there's such a thing as a leader who isn't just after their own power and their own fame and control.
Mm.
It's like a politician on that level. There are people who truly trying to help and do good work, and then there are people who just want to have power, so that they get to walk into a restaurant and somebody knows who they are.
Yeah.
And
So which one are you?
me, I
Hmm.
believe in not looking all the way back. I believe I'm one of the good guys. I've made mistakes, and I won't call them regrets, but I know exactly what those mistakes are. And I would have made a different choice, but these aren't things that ruin somebody's life. And I've yelled at people and regretted it immediately. I will say they deserve to be yelled at, but I didn't need to. I didn't. I wasn't displacing my anger. They really wrecked something stupidly, and I was tense. And it's the fact that I was tense that I most regret. I when
Mm.
I'm, and that's part of why I want a different system. I love working on theater in all sorts of capacities.
Yeah.
Why do I need? I mean, yeah, we all have bad days. I don't mean those, but I'm talking about why do I have to be stressed out that other people aren't doing the job they're paid for? And I'm not smart enough to know how to do everybody's job. Yet somehow I can fix what they do. I figured it out. I don't want to do that. I don't, I walked into a theater company here in New York. This is about 10 years ago. And I really would have liked to have worked at this theater company as a managing director. I liked the work they did. They had a beautiful theater. It was off Broadway. And the first thing I noticed is they had all their young workers who needed mentorship in a little cubby hole with the door closed, and they had no one to listen to, no one to ask questions of. And the big room they had was filled with file cabinets and had more dust in it and more papers thrown across the floor, probably had not been vacuumed or cleaned in a year. And that's where they held my interview, in that room.
That
And
dusty room.
oh, it was, I mean, I didn't want to stay there. And
Mm.
they went through this. And the second I brought up the idea that there's a way for you, and I have experience doing this, adjusting the ratio between your earned income and unearned income, and we might want to look at that. That would help your artistic director. I immediately lost the attention of the executive director, who felt like that was his job. And if I knew how to do it better than he did, that's me attacking him. And all I'm doing is answering questions of what I might bring to the company. And I
Mm.
walked out of there. I didn't even ask for the second interview, which they would have offered me. I just decided it can't work there. So
Interesting.
at that point, I had already learned that there were good bosses and bad bosses. There was no one in that room that I wanted to work with. And yet they had the facilities. They didn't have the money. If they had the money, then you fix things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and that's not across the board. We all have to throw our hat in the ring and try to save people. That's a good thing when you know how to do it. So I'm not against that. But that particular theater company, I did not believe they were savable. And by the way, they're in a lot of trouble, and they almost went under twice, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what they like. They like being under stress. They like thinking we're going to save ourselves this year, and somebody on our board is going to give us money, and we're going to go, we did it again. It's like, no, you want to fix yourselves. You want to smile at each other. You want to laugh a little bit. You want to be proud of what you did. Um,
Yeah, I only want to be somewhere that I can be useful.
it's a good
And
line. That's a good thought.
I and uh that's why I asked you which one are you, because some people just want to throw their weight around, and I'm not that person.
Nope.
I learned that way back in high school as a stage manager, that there's a team here, and these people are as interested, at the point they were as interested in being here as I was.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say they were passionate at that point, but they were as interested in being there as I was. And I did have a moment where I, um, threw my authority in their face. And I came back the next day and said, um, I went a bit over because I couldn't reach you. I said, but really, what it is that we're all here. We're all here because we want to be here, and we're such an important part of this overall production that we've got a job to do. So we need to prioritize that when we get here, and when we finish the job, then we can remember that we're here with each other, and we can have fun and relax. But we've got tasks because people are counting on us.
Mm-hmm.
And so every job I've gone to from then on, because I've primarily worked in nonprofits, I've been saying, we are the stewards of this organization. Every single one of us, not just, whoever our leader is. Every single one of us is a steward. So if you are the maintenance person, it is your job.
Darnell, I'm going to hold you just on that thought because I don't want to lose
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
How do you teach that? Because think again, somebody comes out of college, nobody has told them they're wonderful at anything,
Hmm.
right? Or at least not, I mean, they're coming into a new job. They're intimidated by the experience around them. They just got their first job in a theater. How do you teach them that they are as important to what they're doing when they don't even know what they're supposed to be doing yet because they don't teach it? And,
I
and,
mean,
and I'm not arguing with you. I think what you said is
yeah,
the most important thing in
I
our
get.
past hour that was been said.
Well, I mean, so I just brought on two new interns in our
Mm-hmm.
organization. and I've been saying every day, it's my goal to make sure that you understand what we are doing to run this organization, that you understand every bit of it, even the part that I don't have you working on. I'm telling you about it. Today I had to get on the phone with so and so about this and that, because this is part of my job. This is part of running this organization. So I tell them why whatever task I've got them on is important, because we need this for whatever. I never want you to feel like I'm giving you responsibilities that I should hire somebody for.
Hmm.
You came here for an experience, and I'm trying to provide that. But I want to work with you. I want you to work with us, you know. So I would say the position doesn't exist if it doesn't matter, if it isn't a valuable position.
I think that's beautiful. I'm
So
100%
I you
in
know,
agreement.
I've been big on that, because the previous the previous two interns we had were wonderful, and we were so supportive of everything they were trying to do outside of our organization as well. And it only makes sense. They're going out into the world with some experience that they got from us.
Hmm.
And if all they got was sorting out a mailing list for us, that's not going to be valuable to the next organization.
All right.
They need to understand why what we're doing matters, why we chose this, why we chose the productions that are part of this season. What is our overall conversation that we're trying to have with the community? Why we matter, why we turn the lights on in this building every day. And so
But
I make
but
sure people
and let's be honest about it. Many experienced people at the top don't know that.
understand.
They don't know why they're turning on the lights every day. They don't know why they're doing what they are. They fell into it. They pushed their way into it because it was the next step up on the rung of the ladder, and
Mhm.
they think, I guess I've got good taste. I should be an artistic director. I want the power to choose, as opposed to I have a passion for a direction that theater should go. I care about the community and the audience around here, and I love working with our staff so that we
Mhm.
have that collaborative feeling. I cannot tell you how few of those people still exist. The people who come out of high school and college, they often still have it, and then they get whipped down into the ground and saying, what I want you to do is bring me coffee. and
Yeah,
and I'm going to
that's
leave you some post-its on your desk. Make sure I get the Googled answer to this by in half an hour, and that's it. They don't know why they're doing it. They don't know what the larger picture is, and sometimes they're allowed to come to a party that they can hang out with other people in the organization.
I'm not gonna ask you to bring me coffee.
Well,
I know where the coffee maker is.
yeah, I
I
don't mind
order the
somebody bringing me coffee as long as I can bring them coffee sometimes. I mean, it's done not as your position.
Yeah.
If you just want to, I love it when somebody on their own initiative walks into a meeting and said, I brought you coffee because I know you've been here for the past 3 hours. That's really sweet. I will do it for them too. That's a nice thing as opposed to it's your job.
I brought it for yous.
Anyway, all right. Shall we move on? Come on, sing us out. Uh,
Oh, I can't sing on
yeah, agony.
for the police. I know. Yeah. Those police must be mad.
Yeah, so
Yes.
much. Yeah. My
Well,
again, one of my favorite lines: "Knowing she would go with you if there only were
only
doors."
were doors. Yes. I mean, okay, so you did mention the Glass Menagerie, and I did see a
That's right.
production of Glass Menagerie.
It's a
Uh,
wonderful show, isn't it?
at Arden. Yeah. It's interesting because, you're thinking about this is this is a slice of life kind of uh production. It's a memory
Mm-hmm.
play. Um and
Let's compare
I
because
just
I read today two producers were just as friends were comparing Arthur Miller with Tennessee Williams
hmm,
as who is the essence of American theater from the past.
hmm.
And they weren't saying the other was terrible. They were just trying to discuss the differences. I just saw Death of a Salesman on Broadway. You just saw Glass Menagerie,
Yeah.
and the combination of those two makes me smile. I could those
Hmm.
plays. What a thrill! What a
Yeah.
thrill! They wreck me. Both of them wreck me in the right way. I learn. I continue to learn. I am entertained. The
Yeah.
actors are required to be brilliant, and they
And
usually are.
they're both moments where everything slows down
Hmm.
and you're the only thing you can focus on is this. You know,
That's true.
like I thought about it as we were sitting there. I was like, the lights are a little lower, everything's a little bit dimmer. Even the set design
Hmm.
of it all was very much like we were always in the dark, like even when the lights were on. And it always kind of reminds me of a moment like I've said before. I said, classic theater kind of feels like i- if you were filming and you needed like some sort of background action that your characters are going to play. You're like, I'm going to
Hmm.
have these two characters go see a play, you know, something like the Glass Menagerie in the background of it is like, this is an example of classic theater.
Yeah.
So
Classic
all you
American
have
theater. American theater.
classic American
It's
theater. All
very
you have
American.
in the script is that uh, your character attends a piece of classic theater,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
this is it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I did enjoy it, and it did make me just kind of. I sat back and I wasn't thinking about anything else. I mean, people always grab their phones at intermission, of course, but really, I was just like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And you just have those moments. And I haven't seen this Death of a Salesman, but I think I haven't seen in a few seasons. Company, I think it was Curio Theater Company here in Philadelphia did it most recently for me, and it was like, wow, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the kind of things that the boxes that we were trapped in the past, like they're not the same anymore. The character Tom goes out on the fire escape to have a cigarette. You know, it's like these aren't things we necessarily do anymore.
No, you're right.
Because when you just want to get out, he kept saying he was going to the movies
Yeah.
whenever he got mad and he left. You know, you can
And I
read it
wonder, it's funny you should
whenever he
bring that
wants.
up. I do wonder, and it was the same with Death of a Salesman, although production wise it was updated in the sense that without changing a word, it did not it takes place in the past. You buy it.
Mhm.
But someone who's 20 years old, seeing it, are there things in there they don't understand? And that's
Hmm.
something to ask a 20-year-old at some point. Um,
Yeah.
you know, um, I would think and of course I'm about to see Raisin in the Sun. Um, these are just brilliant pieces of writing. They are universal, and it's the universal quality that means they're worth seeing over and over again, or you know, maybe once every 10 years or 20 years if that's how you want to do it. But they're worth seeing.
Mhm.
And plus, it lets the actors show us what they really know how to do. Oh my
And
goodness, when they're
yeah,
brilliant, they're brilliant.
it also
I'm
shows us that we don't have much of an attention span now.
That's true.
It's like, yeah, to be able to sit with other people in a room and no television on, no phone, and have a conversation, to
But
be
that's
completely enamored by.
and the fans that were at the flea market. That is, I guess, my point.
Mm,
They would prefer, yeah, they all had their phones. Yes, they were all taking pictures of everything they bought and probably posting it. Got
mhm.
it. But it didn't matter. They would have preferred to be in the theater watching a show, and it would have made them happy. I would suspect that many of them were buying souvenirs because they can't afford to keep going back to the theater. It costs too
Mhm.
much. And we
Yeah.
have to figure that out. We need to get a livable wage, and we need to figure out how not to be overly greedy.
Someone will always buy a magnet, and it's always mind-blowing when
Yeah.
they give back the playbill.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Interesting. Yeah.
"Really? You don't want it?" Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is the keepsake, and it is kind of interesting. We just have to and it's different there because, when you see something on Broadway, you're not thinking about who the producer is,
Not at all. Well, I
who the
do.
production company is behind. I mean, but the people coming in
Yeah.
via bridge and tunnel, they're coming over. You're not thinking about, like, who is behind it, but, like, for us, uh, even though we do spend a lot of time telling you what we're bringing to the stage, there's so much more than that, and we can't lose sight of that. There's a reason why we exist. There's a reason why our theater exists in South Philadelphia. There's a reason why, um, you know, there are theaters all over the city in various places, and they are still there after all these years. And that's the thing we have to keep reminding everybody of, even in tough times.
And to round up our conversation, but we need to find a way to make them easier on the
Mhm.
people who are trying to keep them alive. And the
Yeah.
people have to buy the tickets. And we
Mhm.
haven't had the discussion. It may not be possible. Maybe this is the only way it can exist. But in different periods of history, many different things happened. And every time there's a contract negotiation, things change and different costs change. So whatever was can happen again, or whatever hasn't happened yet can first happen. I don't know the answer. Um, Budgetary wise, I will tell you the largest expense of any Broadway show is not its personnel, it is the
Mm.
theater rent. And so one needs to consider that.
Mhm.
Right? And just because over my lifetime, all people kept saying was the stagehands, the musicians, they're the reasons we have to pay so much money. No, they're not. It doesn't mean that they don't make a livable wage. But if you also have, 44 people in the cast and 26 in the orchestra, it's going to cost you money.
Mhm.
But if you have a band that has seven, it's going to cost you less money. It has nothing to do with what each person is making.
Yeah. But where
That's
else
something
can
to
you
keep in
go?
mind.
Where else can you go? And all those people are waiting to tell you a story.
That's right. And to do a beautiful job of it.
Mhm.
You hope.
Yeah.
And
Come be a
after,
part of the conversation.
yep,
That's all we're
yep.
ever
There
saying.
you go.
Yeah.
All right. Good night. Good
All
afternoon.
right.
Good morning.
That's
Whenever
the
you're
business
listening
of
to this.
theater. That's the business of theater. The working title is
Yeah. What is
I
it?
want to be a producer.
Good one, but not.
I want to be a producer because it's everything I'm not.
And while we may love that show and love Mel Brooks, he's also the first person to introduce premium pricing to the theater,
Mm. Ah,
and
he-
and he got it. I mean, we thought house seats was all we could charge, and all of a sudden he said, "Hey, someone's willing to pay $500 a ticket. Let's charge them." And all of a sudden they did, and I'm going, we didn't need to do that, but we did.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Bryce.
So we both love him and hate him for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the business of theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford,
I'm Mitch Weiss.
and we'll see you at the theater.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.